Yo, welcome back to Son of a Preacher Man. Soapman is in the house. Okay, so in my last episode, we talked about the premise of stupidity. And all that means is we're going to approach these biblical subjects, these mysteries of the Bible, with humility. We're going to approach these subjects like we don't have a clue as to what's going on. We're starting from scratch. We don't know nothing. We want to get to accurate answers, and we want to use evidence. We want to have some proof to back up our conclusions or to support the conclusions that we come to, okay? We're asked to believe that Moses split the Red Sea and that Samson defeated 1,000 men with a jawbone. Imagine that, 1,000 men with the jawbone of an ass. Or that Joshua made the sun stand still. Jesus walking on waves. I'm about to start talking about the book of Enoch. And the book of Enoch is like the Bible on steroids when it comes to supernatural events and hard pills to swallow. It's probably the reason that the book of Enoch never made it into the Bible. It was never canonized. And this is where our premise of stupidity skills are going to really come into play, because the book of Enoch asks us or suggests some things that are really unbelievable. If you thought the Bible couldn't be explained by science, then the book of Enoch is exponentially worse in that regard. Okay, so folks, I've shortened these videos to accommodate your attention span, so let's just jump right into it. The Bible says Enoch walked with God. If you've ever heard of Enoch, or if you know anything about Enoch, it's most likely that he walked with God, or supposedly walked with God. So when the Bible says Enoch walked with God, what does that make you think of? The Bible says Enoch walked with God. Do you take that to mean literally, like two old dudes, like, I don't know, walking on the beach in the clouds? Let's get the whole verse. The whole verse, Genesis chapter 5:24 says, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Okay, now right off the bat, I know what you're thinking. The Bible says Enoch walked with God and was not, because God took him. God took him. God took him where? So what are you thinking? Already right off the bat, and this is really basically as much information as we gonna get about Enoch. He was one of the sons of Adam. He was the seventh descendant of Adam. And the Bible says he walked with God and was not, because God took him. And of course, God, you probably thinking, is some old bearded, majestic looking man. And when it says that Enoch walked with God, are you taking that literally or figuratively? And what does that mean to walk with God? Was he a man of faith? Was he holy? But the Bible says God took him, and he was not. So it makes it seem like it's more than just the thing of faith. It makes it seem like God could have possibly taken this human being into heaven. So how do you square that with the average Joe? Well, most people just say to themselves, well, it's God. So yeah, God physically took Enoch up into heaven. Why? Because God can do that. He's God. It all comes along with being God. God can do anything. He can do magic. He can do poof. He can just poof Enoch. He can just poof Enoch right into heaven. Okay, so let me tell you real quick why that doesn't work. We've been to space before. And the reason we were able to go to space was because we had technology in the form of spacesuits, which allowed us to go to space. So you see, there's a reason that God cannot physically take Enoch into the heavens. It's because God can't just do anything. You see, the one thing God can't do is break his own laws. That's the reason we need spacesuits to go to space, is because of the laws that God already set in place. You see, there's no oxygen in space. God made that rule. It wasn't man. There's also no gravity in space. Also another God rule. The rules, meaning the laws of physics and all the other laws of nature that God put in place, he cannot break those laws. No one can. Those laws can never be broken. They are forever. So God's not just whisking somebody up into space as to, because they're special to him, or, to show favoritism or to prove a point. We wear spacesuits, which allow us to go to space because of God's laws. So we can rule out Enoch going into space physically without a spacesuit, or at least I hope we can. Genesis 5:23 through 24 reads, "And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." So here's the final thing about Enoch that I want to talk about today. According to the common belief, Enoch never dies. The Bible says that Enoch lived 365 years and he walked with God and was not, for God took him. People interpret that to mean God took Enoch before he could die, and so he never died. But it doesn't stop there, okay? Because people wouldn't be people if it did. Some people interpret this passage to mean that Enoch was part of an alien abduction. Yeah. You see, God is really this master superior alien God of this alien race who came down in his spaceship and abducted Enoch. That's what this story is really about. It's about the first alien abduction. In fact, that's what all this Bible is about, really is about aliens. Once again, here we go. Acting like cavemen, not using the resources and science that is available to us, not using our God-given common sense. In that regard, the caveman just may have us beat. Okay, so let's take this from the top and see if we can unpack it a little bit, because Enoch's story gets crazy, and so I just want to take this bit by bit. Let's take it from the top. Who is Enoch exactly? Well, Enoch is the seventh descendant of Adam. He lives 365 years, and the Bible says that God takes him. And so the common belief is Enoch never dies. So a few episodes ago, we talked about we compared the Sumerian king list to Adam and his descendants. And I think I proved that they were one in the same list. The Sumerian kings are said to have lived for tens of thousands of years. But I showed you a couple episodes ago that if you divide the lengths of these kings' reign by the days of a month, the approximate days of the month, you get the length of years that Adam and his descendants lived. For example, Ululim is the first king on the Sumerian king list. If you take the length of his reign, which is 28,800 years, and divided by 30.95, which is the approximate days of the month, you get 930, which is the exact length of years Adam lived. You can do the same thing with each member or each king on the Sumerian king list, dividing the length of their reign by the approximate days of the month, and you will get the corresponding descendant of Adam. Elulim will match up with Adam, Alaugar will match up with Seth, and so on and so forth. So anyway, the seventh descendant of Adam, which is Enoch, matches up with the seventh Sumerian king on the Sumerian king list, Enmindaranki. They have the exact same story. According to the Bible, Enoch is taken up into heaven where God shows him amazing things. Enmindaranki, and some, these names change depending on whose list you're using, but Enmindaranki has the exact same story where he's taken up into heaven. Here's another fun fact. Enoch is said to have lived 365 years, and God took him. If you notice, he has the shortest lifespan out of Adam and his descendants. Coincidentally, Enmindaranki also has the shortest lifespan out of all the kings on the Sumerian king list. If that's not enough for you, Ziusudra, the 10th king on the Sumerian king list, has a very similar story to that of Noah. Both characters survive a worldwide flood where only them and their immediate families survived. So I think I've shown enough evidence to match these two lists. And I'm pretty confident that Enmindaranki and Enoch are one and the same. So a quick look at Enmindaranki or Enmindarana, depending on whose list you're going by. A quick Wikipedia search says this. Enmindarana of Zimber was an ancient Sumerian king whose name appears in the Sumerian kings list as the 7th pre-dynastic king of Sumer. He was also the topic of myth and legend, said to have reigned for around 21,000 years. Now you go down to the myth and it says, a myth written in a Semitic language tells of Enmindaranki subsequently being taken to heaven by the gods Shamash and Adad. Now I don't know if you know who Adad is. You may not be familiar with this particular ancient Sumerian deity, but Adad is the god that is eventually going to be worshipped by the Hebrews. And he is eventually going to be incorporated into the Yahweh belief. I'm not going to go down that road right now in this episode, but if you want me to go down that road in another episode, leave a comment in the comment section. The whole purpose of me pulling up this Wikipedia page was just to show you that Enmindarana or Enmindaranki has a similar, if not the exact same story as Enoch. We're talking about the same person. So to continue, it says, a myth written in a Semitic language tells of Enmindaranki subsequently being taken to heaven by the gods Shamash and Adad and taught the secrets of heaven and earth. In particular, Enmindaranki was taught arts of divination, such as how to inspect oil on water and how to discern messages in the liver of animals and several other divine secrets. So, according to this myth about Enmindaranki, who I hope we all believe is Enoch, he had the skill or the ability of divination. Now, some of you may not be familiar with exactly what divination is, so let's just do a quick Wikipedia search. Okay, just basic definition. Divination, to foresee, foretell, is the attempt to gain insight into a question or situation by way of an occultic ritual or practice. Using various methods throughout history, diviners ascertain their interpretations of how a querent should proceed by reading signs, events, or omens, or though alleged contact or interaction with supernatural agencies, such as spirits, gods, godlike beings, or the will of the universe. So, in short, a diviner is kind of like a prophet, or he has the capability of using certain methods to attain a level of prophecy. They seem to be some type of spiritual beings with extrasensory perceptions. Now, all this mumbo jumbo may be rare, but it's still scientific. We're talking about something that has to do with the mind. And Enoch obviously is very gifted in this area. We may not know all the ins and outs to it, but it seems like that's what this is pointing to. I don't know if you are familiar with Nostradamus. He was also a diviner. He predicted the future. He prophesied. And a lot of his prophecies, a lot of people at least believe that a lot of his prophecies, if not all of them, came true. But one of the things that Nostradamus used to do before having one of his visions or prophecies is that he would stare into a pool of water. There was a strategy to it. There was a method he used to help him, I don't know what you say, like get in that zone or enhance his acuity. What I'm saying, there was a method to his madness, and though we may not exactly understand it, we do know that it is science-based. Even if we don't like the science, you can call it an occult, you can call it witchcraft or whatever you want. It's not magic, it's not poof. They're doing something to acquire a desired outcome. They're doing something to reach a goal. And so Enoch had this capability. He had this skill. He was a diviner. He was a prophet. He was spiritual. He had extrasensory perception of some sort to some degree. So the Bible says Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And what that simply means is that Enoch had a vision. Okay, so the Bible says that God took Enoch and he was not. So how do we incorporate that into Enoch's vision? If God didn't physically take Enoch anywhere, how did God show Enoch all of the heavens? Why does it say God took him if he didn't physically take him? And how could God show Enoch the heavens if he didn't physically take him? What, did he bring the heavens to Enoch? So I don't know if you all have ever heard of an outer body experience. My mother used to tell me about her having outer body experiences. Ever since I was a little kid, my mother had these terrifying stories of her having these outer body experiences. She still has them to this very day. So I've never had an outer body experience, thank God. You know what I mean? I don't know, it seemed like it's pretty scary to me. But I guess it's something similar to astral projection. You know, it's sort of like your spirit or your soul comes out of your body and is able to walk around and travel while your physical body remains at rest. So anyways, my mom used to tell me these scary stories about her waking up in the middle of the night, standing over herself, looking down at her body and thinking that, you know, she had died and, you know, this was her ghost. You know, fast forward to today, you know, she's not so startled when it happens to her, but it still happens the exact same way. She wakes up she wakes up in the middle of the night and she's staring down at herself. Only now it's happened so often that she doesn't panic when it happens. And she told me that my grandfather used to do it also. He could do it at will. My mother told me that when she first came to my grandfather about, you know, this event that was happening to her, these outer body experiences, she told me that my grandfather told her, oh, don't worry about it. I do it all the time. You know, you should travel. You know what I mean? You know, go on a trip, go see the world. don't panic when it happens. I do it all the time. And I remember stories of my grandfather, or stories that my grandfather used to tell about how he would have outer body experiences and go to some of like his favorite bars that he liked to go to in China or Japan, wherever he was stationed at in the Second World War. But my grandfather, he talked about it all the time. It was natural to him. It was normal. It was fun. He encouraged it. So when I was around in the 4th grade, I started reading up on this. I noticed this Time Life magazine, or I noticed this Time Life book that was sitting in the corner of my English class. And it had, on the cover, it had like, this person having an outer body experience. So I read the book. It talked about how our spiritual consciousness was connected to our physical body by like this rope or like string, and that if it was severed, then that consciousness could never get back. So it seemed to me like you could only travel so far. But here's the thing, sky's the limit. We don't know much about astral projection. We don't know much about outer body experiences. But, for those people who, rolling your eyes right now, it's a real thing. You probably, if you haven't experienced one yourself, you probably know someone who has. Ask around. This has happened to a lot of people. It's like a good percentage of the population this happens to. We don't understand the human mind, and we certainly don't understand astral projection and outer body experiences, the severity or extent of it. And I'm not saying this is what happened to Enoch. I'm just listing this as a possibility. Think about this. My grandfather, and I don't believe he has a reason to lie, claimed that he could come out of his body and visit China and Russia in split seconds, just with a thought, on a whim. Imagine the power you would have at your fingertips. You could check and see if your spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend was cheating, and they would never know. They would never know. You could call them in the morning and be like, yeah, how was that chocolate malt milkshake while you was watching the Avengers 2 with that hussy? Yeah, she was wearing a pink blouse and hearts on her panty, and you and the boyfriend like, oh my God, how could she possibly know that? I thought I covered all my angles. It's because her consciousness was sitting right there. Imagine the power at your fingertips. And what does my mother do with this great power? When she comes out of her body or has these outer body experiences, what does she do? She sits there quivering like a leaf on a branch on a windy day. I'm not mad at you, Ma. I can't do it at all, and even if I could, I'd be too scared to. So what did God show Enoch? If Enoch had this capability, if this was part of his divination capabilities, sky was the limit. So what did God show Enoch? He would have showed him everything. He showed him the heavens. He would have saw the sun. No, not like how we see it up close. He would have saw the larger solar system. He would have saw how big the earth was in comparison to the sun. He would have saw how close the earth was to other. He would have saw the cosmos. He would have saw nebula, neutron stars, and black holes. Because that's what heaven is. We talked about black holes and heaven in previous episodes. The heavens are space, and Enoch would have been privy to all of it. The question is, how? Did God physically take Enoch up and whisk him at warp light speed? 1 trillion things would have killed a normal person, like lack of oxygen, I don't know, the speed of light ripping you apart atom by atom. Or did Enoch simply have something similar to an outer body experience? Was it maybe something he could control, do at will, and explored the infinite expanse of the cosmos? He would have seen it all. He would have saw sights that no other person has ever seen. Even to this day, he would have been unique in that aspect. When the Bible says that God showed Enoch the heavens and when the Bible says that God took Enoch and he was not, and when the myth legends say that in Mindaranki was shown the heavens, they're talking about space. They're talking about the cosmos, heaven. And Enoch would have understood it all. He would have had an understanding about this environment, about the earth and the universe. He would have had a unique understanding exclusive to himself. Folks, I'm gonna be honest with you. Ain't no telling what Enoch saw. He tried to come back and tell us. He tried to come back and explain it to us. But the things that Enoch saw was so foreign to us that him explaining it to us only confused us even more. We thought Enoch was talking about aliens. We thought Enoch was talking about men walking in the clouds and sitting on iron thrones in space. We thought Enoch was talking about an alternate dimension where there was grass and animals. But what Enoch was trying to describe to us were the celestial bodies, were the celestial phenomenons, were these unique things that only his eyes were witness to. So when you sit back and think about it from that aspect, it's no wonder this book is so confusing. We have nothing to compare what Enoch says to. We have nothing to compare what he saw. There's nobody else who can back him up or verify it. We just have to take his word for it. But Enoch was such a great man, and he was so on point. He was truly a man gifted by God. He was one of the most unique people ever to walk the face of the planet in the aspect, in the respects that he could perform this thing that he could do, where he had this power of divination and could travel and traverse the very cosmos. He was the only one, I'm not sure if he was the only one who could do it, but he was the only person that we know about who did it. Anyways, I'm not saying that what I'm saying is right. I wasn't there and I don't have all the answers, but I'm sure more comfortable betting my money on Enoch, having an outer body experience, or, just this being something of the mind, than God physically transporting Enoch to either heaven or to an alternate dimension, which is heaven. Folks, I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Son of a Preacher Man. Please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you got any questions, comments, or insults, leave them in the comment section. I'll see you same soap time, same soap channel, Soapman.